Hi folks, in this video we're going to go over the 2026 FIA Formula 3 grid and their respective racing backgrounds. We'll also run through a quick guide of how to spot each driver on track. When there are 30 cars, many of which have very similar liveries, it can be hard to distinguish between them if you don't know what to look for. We'll quickly run through some basics of the championship for those of you who are new to F3 or those of you who want a refresher before the season starts. Anyone who just wants a run through of the drivers on the grid can skip to the timestamps below. F3 currently runs 6-cylinder 3.4-litre engines capable of 380 horsepower at 8,000 RPM. Their top speed is reported at 300 kilometers an hour or 186 miles an hour. They have 6 gears, and while F1 is no longer using DRS, F3 still has rear wing DRS or drag reduction system to use on predetermined straights on each track. The driver activates the DRS to open the flaps on the rear wing to allow air to pass through more effectively and reducing the drag, hence drag reduction. DRS can be used during qualifying, but they can only be used during the races if they're within 1 second of the competitor ahead of them. F3 also have access to 4 different tyres, slick soft, medium and hards, and treaded wets for the rain. There are 10 rounds for F3, with most of the rounds occurring in Europe throughout June and July. Every race weekend, they have 1 practice session, 1 qualifying session, 1 sprint race, and 1 feature race. Reverse grids are used for the sprint race, flipping the order of the top 12 qualifiers. Sprint points are awarded with 10 points for first, counting down to 1 point for 10th place. There is a point for the fastest lap amongst the top 10 finishers. The feature race then has the drivers starting in the qualifying order with 25 points for first place, and then 18, 15, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, and then 1 point for 10th place. The pole position start for the feature race nets 2 points, and there's another fastest lap point on the table for the top 10 finishers. For Formula 3, we have 10 teams with 3 drivers to a team. Unlike Formula 1, you're not necessarily playing a team game where you might be expected to help out your teammate by defending against other drivers or having to respond to team orders and let a teammate with a better pace through. It's more of a free-for-all in F3 where everyone on the track is equally a rival. That's not to say that the teams don't want to succeed as a whole. You ideally won't be shoving your teammates into a wall, as the team with the most combined points at the end of each season wins the team's championship, and then the team can demand higher seat fees for the following season and be more picky about the driver lineup they have joining them for the following season. With 10 teams and 30 drivers, there are 3 drivers for each team. On-track driver identifiers are numbers, liveries, and T-camera colors. The numbers are determined by the team standings from the previous season and have nothing to do with driver seniority or performance. With 3 drivers to a team, each team has a driver with a black, yellow, and red T-shaped camera on the top of their air intake. Some drivers are part of various Formula 1 teams' driver academies, and in some cases this means they run a corresponding livery with their associated team. So while some drivers will be driving for the same F3 team, they won't necessarily have a matching livery with their teammate. Individual drivers may also have sponsors displayed on their liveries. At this point in a driver's junior career, they've already had to spend an ungodly amount of money on karting and single-seater championships, and F3 is no different. These drivers have significant sponsors and investors supporting them, or come from wealthy families that can cover the massive cost to get them into these coveted seats. My little caveat is that at the time of filming, pre-season testing hasn't started yet, so I only have some of the post-2025 season testing liveries. I will superimpose the pre-season testing liveries as I'm editing this, otherwise the video won't be up in time before the season starts. I'll also link below some grid guides that I've made with teams, driver numbers, and any associated academies, which you can download to use while you watch the racing. We'll go through the drivers in number order. The numbers are determined by team standings from the previous season and, again, have nothing to do with driver seniority or performance. I would also like to note that I am referring to this as the 2026 starting grid, as some drivers don't necessarily have the funding to cover costs for the whole season, so they might only be around for a few rounds. They also may have commitments elsewhere with other series that they may need to depart for. There might also be drivers who have to step away for a few weekends to deal with injuries, or if for whatever reason they've amassed enough penalty points that they get suspended for a race weekend. So over the course of a season, you are likely to see a new name pop up every now and then. The winner of the team's championship last year was Campos Racing. They clinched it in the last round of 2025 and they have an all-new lineup this year with some very promising talent. First up, Teofil Nile, who had some great performances in F3 2025, making it to the podium 3 times, but never quite achieving the top step. Nevertheless, he was the top-scoring driver for Van Amersfoort last year. Nile was also a standout in the 2025 Macau Grand Prix, achieving the fastest qualifying time, and he managed to make a huge move in the final laps of the race to pass Boyer and Delaney to take the win. I'm excited to see what he can do with Campos for 2026 and hope to see him at the heels of the title fight, or at least with some consistent high points finishes. Ugo Gachuku made the move from Prema to Campos for 2026. Once Prema managed to get to grips with the new F3 specs last year, he showed the good form that people more or less expected of him. This also coincided with a focus on managing car weight limit issues by stripping off his McLaren livery to combat the weight brought by his very tall frame. Ugochukwu also had a phenomenal run in CT Frot at the start of the year, clinching the championship with consistency and great qualifying pace and race results. Expect to see him in the title fight for F3. It's been reported that he was testing for Red Bull in January, which lends to the hope that he'll get picked up soon by a team who can give him a better chance at getting an F1 seat than McLaren. Campos seem to have ties with Red Bull's junior academy and typically house Red Bull-backed drivers. It's no different this season with Ernesto Rivera. The general impression is that a lot of his results don't necessarily reflect his abilities. Some incidents took Rivera out of what would have otherwise been a more successful CT Frot campaign at the start of the year. Red Bull and Campos must have a good deal of belief in him to see a rookie in the winning team from 2025 alongside 2 strong competitors. It was a bit of a 2-horse race between Campos and Trident for the team championship last year, with Campos clinching the title ahead of Trident at the final feature race. I highly recommend a watch of the F3 races at Monza in 2025. That feature race was a real nail-biter. So first up for Trident is Noah Stromstad. He had a strong rookie season with them in 2025 and only really appeared underwhelming in comparison to his dominant teammate Rafa Kamara. He's going to have another strong teammate this year with Freddie Slater, so I hope he can improve on his good results from last year and doesn't drop down the order. Newly minted Audi development driver Freddie Slater is one of the favourites to win the 2025 F3 season. He had a fantastic run at Freca in 2025, eventually resulting in a championship win. He managed this while also popping up for 3 rounds of GB3 and a few appearances in F3. His drive at the 2025 Macau Grand Prix didn't quite line up with his other great results. He pushed it a little too hard trying to regain a lost lead, ran wide out of a turn, and took himself out of the race. It took Slater a few rounds in CT Frot to start to match with Ugochukwu, but far outmatched his competitors in the wet. I'm fully expecting some exciting battles across the F3 season. Matteo De Paulo earned himself a spot in the McLaren driver development program at the tail end of 2025. He made the strongest fight against Slater of the Freca 2025 grid, so I'm very interested to see how he stacks up against him in the same team. There's a good amount of hype behind him, so he's going to be one to watch. MP Motorsport had a great season in 2025, landing in 3rd place for the team's championship, with 2 drivers frequently scoring podiums. Hopefully they can keep up the momentum and have it be more than a 2-horse race for the team's championship with Campos and Trident again. Mattia Kolnagi is the new signing for Red Bull's Junior Academy. Despite not participating in the more competitive feeder series, he's had an excellent run in Euro Cup 3, winning the championship by a decent margin without even competing in the final round. I'm keen to see what he's capable of here. Next up for MP is Tuukka Tarpanen. The Ferrari Academy driver had a good first full season in F3 last year despite his team at the time, ART, not being as competitive as expected. He should be a great driver to watch in the seat with MP in 2026, and hopefully he'll be able to get more out of the car and drive to the level he's been known to. The Williams-backed Alessandro Giusti is returning for a second season with MP. His rookie season produced some excellent results, so I have high hopes for him to be challenging for podiums. ART Grand Prix, while they did get some solid results in 2025, never managed to lock in consistent finishes, despite having a solid lineup. They have an all-new lineup for 2026, starting with Taito Kato. Taito Kato is a consistent points finisher, a trend I hope to see continue in F3. Even if he's not quite a title contender, he seems to really have the pace to finish high up in the championship. Kato had started the year off with FR Met, where he managed to get completely airborne at Abu Dhabi, taking himself out of most of the first round. I've no doubt he'd be higher on the leaderboard if not for the round 1 incident. Marcin Gladish, similar to Kolnagi, hasn't competed in Freca or FR Met. He landed 10th in the Euro Cup 3 championship, but had his seat with ART confirmed and announced before Euro Cup 3 season was even finished in 2025. This does seem to be a little premature of a career move, but I hope he can get to grips with the car, tyres, and new track without falling too far from the results he's had in previous series. Kanato Lee has raced for ART since the 2024 Macau Grand Prix. For his GB3 season in 2025, he only competed in 3 rounds due to FRECA conflicts and made the podium at Spa on all 3 races that weekend. His results in FRECA don't speak to him being a title contender this year, but he was very much holding his own with some great runs during CT Frot 2026, so hopefully he'll continue to show some flashes of brilliance. Now, we are missing a driver running number 13. F3 and F2 grids don't run the number 13 on their cars, presumably for superstitious reasons. I know for some American racing series, having green or purple livery on the car is supposed to be bad luck, but that doesn't seem to be much of a thing for European racing. Van Amersfoort Racing had a great season in 2025 with several podiums and have an all-new lineup for 2026. Hiyu Yamakoshi had a poor second half of his FRECA season last year, but beyond that he has some otherwise great results. I really hope this proves to be a solid rookie season for him. Enzo Delaney has achieved some pretty fantastic race results and seems to have great pace. In his 2025 season, he was no stranger to podium finishes, so I hope he can continue that trend for this season. A little bit of preseason spice was that Delaney was initially signed with Prema, but swapped to VAR a week before preseason testing, taking the spot previously occupied by Jesse Carrasquedo, a move that will hopefully set him up for a more successful season. Next up is Bruno Del Pino, an interesting move from where he was with MP in 2025, dropping down to a lower finishing team. Compared to his teammates last season, Del Pino didn't make much of an impression, but hopefully he can find a more ideal car setup at VAR and improve on his results from last season. Rodin Motorsport has climbed up the team's order a bit this year and brings an all-new lineup for 2026. Based on his performances in FRECA, I think everyone was expecting Pedro Claro to sign with a team that finished higher up in the championship order than Rodin, but I'm very keen to see what he's able to accomplish for the 2026 season. Brando Badoer is another departure for the McLaren driver development program for this season alongside Ugo Chuku. Despite a promising junior career in single-seater racing, Badoer's first F3 season in 2025 was one to forget. Even though his previous team Prema struggled at the beginning of the season, he didn't seem to make the same improvements as his teammates were later in the year. Hopefully he can improve on his racecraft and make better progress in 2026. Christian Ho's 2025 F3 season didn't really reflect his previous results. He was with Dams, who seemed to struggle the whole season, so maybe changing to Rodin, who has a better grip on car setups, will give him an opportunity to show his abilities. Ho has already clinched a win earlier this year during the first round of FR Met, alongside another podium finish. Prema Racing used to be touted as one of the golden standards for feeder series racing, but appeared to drop off a cliff in 2025. Whether it was from spreading themselves too thinly across other series or from the exodus of several key personnel and funders, they've very much fallen from grace. There was even preseason drama that I spoke about earlier with Enzo Delaney moving to Van Amersfoort before preseason testing, which hopefully isn't a sign of things to come for them. Their first driver is Louis Sharp. Everyone expected great things out of Sharp in 2025, but sadly he fell uncharacteristically short of expectations. Hopefully Sharp will be more confident following his results in CT Frot and can produce results that are more aligned with his junior championship winning finishes again. Along the same lines as Sharp, James Wharton's last season in F3 didn't seem to meet the expectations set by his earlier results in other junior series. None of the 2025 ART drivers really seemed to do as well as expected last year, so it's likely it may have been due to the team not getting to grips with the new car. If Prema can continue with the form they've rediscovered in the latter half of the 2025 season, we'll hopefully see Wharton with some better finishes. Just adding a little bit of extra filming on this one, the late game ring-in for Prema is Jose Garfias. I've noted him as a rookie as he only participated in one round of F3 for 2025. Sadly, he didn't finish either the sprint or the feature race that he took part in. While Garfias has had some good results in the Eurocup 3 and Euro Formula Open championships, he hasn't made much of a splash in the more competitive Formula Regional Series. We can only hope that his retirements for 2025 were an anomaly, otherwise Prema might not see much of an improvement in the team's championship for 2026. Okay, back to the rest of the video I filmed. Hitech TGR fell in the ranks a bit in 2025 with a tale of two halves. Their two full-season drivers finished 5th and 29th in the competition, so you can't necessarily lay the blame of the finishing position entirely at the feet of the team, but they have an all-new lineup for 2026. Michael Shin had a brief foray into F3 with 3 race weekends in 2023. At the time he didn't make an impact, but has since had some good results in some of the less competitive feeder series. This 2025 GB3 result isn't as much of an anomaly as it appears, as he only competed for one race weekend and managed to nab more points than drivers who competed for 3 or 4 weekends. Hopefully his return to F3 has some good points finishes for him. Red Bull Junior fan McLaughlin's move to F3 comes across as a little premature. It feels like there's an expectation for drivers to perform at higher and higher levels at younger ages, so this might well be a product of that. He's moving to F3 with very little Formula Regional experience, having only just competed in CT Frot at the beginning of 2026. Even in Macau, he was running an F4 at the end of 2025. He did seem to struggle to get to grips with the car during the CT Frot series, so I can only hope that Red Bull's faith is well placed and he can match pace with the other F3 drivers in the field. Jin Nakamura has a mix of single-seater and endurance racing background. He's shown some decent results and proved a great deal of consistency in CT Frot earlier this year. I hope his continued partnership with Hitech can net him some high points finishes. It would do my heart good to see him on the podium at least once. AAX Racing was the team with the highest turnover in 2025, with them appearing to offer lots of short-term seat deals, only having one driver out of 8 total compete for the full season. I hope the same won't apply to 2026, but maybe don't get too attached to this lineup just in case. First up for AAX is Brad Benavides. He's had such an odd racing career, having returned to F3 in 2025 after almost a full F2 season in 2023, then going back to Euroformula in 2024. He had great pace in 2025 and pulled some excellent quali runs, but he is 25 years old in a junior feeder series where his competitors are as young as 17. You do have to wonder what his long-term racing goals are and where he's looking to land. Javan David is another driver who has ascended to F3 without competing in FRECA or FR-Met. He put up a great fight in Euroformula 2025, but fell short of the title despite being a consistent podium finisher. He only joined GB3 for one race weekend, hence his 33rd finishing position, and he didn't make as much of an impression on the CT Frot grid as I was hoping, but his racecraft is well praised. Hopefully he can bring that to F3 this season, where he has a longer time to figure out the car. I automatically feel sorry for anyone trying to live in the shadow of family members who have succeeded in their career path. There's so much pressure to perform at a higher level. Fernando Barrichello's past results don't suggest that he'll be fighting for podiums amongst this grid, but I appreciated how humble he came across in his interviews when he joined the final round of F3 in 2025. He seems self-aware enough to know that being born into a racing family does not automatically make you good at it. Let's see if he can put in the work and dig some points finishing positions on his own merit. Dam's Lucas Oil didn't seem to find a good rhythm with the new car in 2025, and as a result, rarely found themselves finishing in the points. A re-signing for Nicola Lacorte with Dams. Sadly, Lacorte's results speak to a driver who is trying to speed run his career rather than taking the necessary time to develop skill. He didn't make much of an impression on the F3 grid last year, not scoring any championship points. Hopefully spending more time in the same category will give him the time he needs to develop and produce some points finishing results. Nandavut Bidramhakti doesn't have quite the career one would expect before trying to graduate to F3. I would have thought he'd have another run at FRECA and try to climb the ranks and develop a bit more before moving into F3. We'll have to see how the season goes for him. Our last driver for the 2026 F3 starting grid is Gerard G. In F3 for 2025, Gerard G didn't seem to quite meet the mark set by his historical results and scored only a single point with Hitech. Comparatively, his teammate and graduate to F2, Martinius Stenshorn, closed out the 2025 championship in 5th. I worry with the combination of G not getting a solid grip on the car and Dams not nailing setups in 2025, he might not be hitting the ground running this year. Well, I hope that's brought you up to speed on the initial F3 grid lineup for 2026. There are likely to be changes throughout the year. Ideally, I plan on making update videos throughout the 2026 season, going over results and stand-up performances, as well as updating you on grid changes and other news. I'd love to hear your thoughts about these drivers and how you feel the season is going to go. I've really enjoyed watching feeder series, and my family and friends are sick to death of me talking about it, so I figured I'd put my ramblings on the internet. And I hope it'll either get you to watch a great racing series or has given you some useful background info going into the season. Now, I'll make a similar video for the 2026 F2 grid, so please subscribe if you want to catch that video when it comes out, or if you'd like to see my other F3 videos throughout the season. I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks for watching.